Detective Lauren Mitchell had worked the downtown St. Louis beat for nearly a decade, and in that time she had seen her share of late-night incidents, routine disturbances spilling out from crowded bars, an occasional smash-and-grab theft in the shadows of an empty alley, even a few heartbreaking accidents on slick winter streets. But nothing quite prepared her for the call she received in the early morning hours of June 2, 2019. It wasn't the routine nature of a domestic quarrel gone wrong, nor the disorientation that followed a busy baseball game evening at Busch Stadium. Instead, it was the feeling that something here would linger, that this case would become one of those stories that refused to fade away. As she stepped from her unmarked cruiser, the looming structure of the parking garage stood tall against a humid night sky. It was well past midnight, and yet the heat still clung to the concrete. She would later recall the way the streetlights cast uneasy halos of light across oil-slicked pavement and the distant hum of traffic carried on the Mississippi's slow breeze. Everything felt suspended, as if time had decided to watch and wait. The discovery had come just after 1:45 a.m. on that Sunday morning. A passing pedestrian on the sidewalk below the sixth-floor railing of the parking garage noticed a figure lying on the ground, motionless. It had been a warm night, the temperature hovering around the mid-70s Fahrenheit, with only a light haze in the air, no rain, good visibility. The witness, a visiting salesman whose flight out was the next afternoon, had walked from a nearby bar back to his hotel. He had been drawn by the unusual sight of what looked like a person in distress. As he got closer, the shape became unmistakable. A young woman, dark hair spread out around her, dressed in jeans and a casual top. He approached, heart pounding, and realized she wasn't responding. Panicked, he stepped back and frantically called 911. The emergency dispatcher's line crackled. The salesman struggled to give a precise location, describing the parking structure near Broadway and Poplar, just a stone's throw from the stadium where thousands of fans had earlier cheered on the Cardinals. The paramedics were dispatched immediately, and patrol units already in the area, due to post-game activity, arrived within minutes. Yellow tape was quickly strung across the sidewalk. First responders attempted basic life checks, but it was already too late. Within the hour, detectives, including Lauren Mitchell, were on scene. At first glance, it looked like a terrible fall. Yet there was something that didn't fit the pattern of a simple accident. Early witness statements suggested raised voices echoing from an upper level of the structure not long before the discovery. Surveillance cameras might have caught something. There were still people lingering around, intoxicated fans departing the bars that stayed open late on weekends. Some of them claimed to have heard a scream, others just a muffled argument. A few had seen a couple, perhaps newlyweds, dressed in matching Cardinals gear, ascending the garage steps. Nobody had expected tragedy. St. Louis in 2019 was a mix of old and new. Downtown had been undergoing redevelopment efforts for years. Modern lofts, trendy restaurants, and the well-loved stadium created a vibrant atmosphere on game nights. The community was used to crowds, noise, and the occasional flare of tension when sports-fueled exuberance soured. The city's population hovered around 300,000 within its municipal boundaries, with many suburban communities feeding into the downtown nightlife. The neighborhood around the stadium was generally considered safe, especially on game nights when police presence was high and foot traffic abundant. Violent crime had been trending in complex patterns, some years better, some worse, but nothing in the immediate neighborhood signaled the kind of event that would draw national attention. The local economy, supported by tourism, sports, and the service industry, had been steadily improving. There had been a sense of cautious optimism among residents. But soon, things would turn badly. Previous high-profile crimes in the area were relatively scarce. Occasionally, a mugging or a bar fight might make the papers, but this was different. There was no reason to suspect that a young woman would end up lying at the base of a parking garage after a well-attended ball game. Perhaps that's why the community braced itself when the morning news broke. Many who had left the stadium hours earlier, still wearing their team colors, woke to headlines about a suspicious death in a garage just blocks away. It was all too close, too unsettling. A collective anxiety rippled through the community. People demanded to know what happened, who she was, and whether this was an isolated incident or part of a darker trend. They would soon learn the names: Aneria Nikki Jenkins and her husband Bradley Jenkins, and as the story developed, it would rock the quiet corners of Missouri's collective psyche, leaving lasting echoes that would influence how the community saw itself and how it grappled with tragedy. Born as Aneria Dolores Hill in late spring of 1992, Nikki, though she rarely used her given name professionally, was 27 at the time of her death. She stood about 5'7", of medium build, her long dark hair often styled in simple waves that framed her warm, expressive face. She carried herself with a quiet confidence, her brown eyes reflecting an intensity and intelligence that hinted at deep wells of empathy. Nikki came from a close-knit family originally from a smaller community in Missouri. Her parents, both employed in middle-class professions, her father a city maintenance worker, and her mother a receptionist at a local doctor's office, had raised Nikki and her younger brother in a modest home. Holidays were simple, family gatherings frequent, and the children grew up feeling cared for and loved. Nikki excelled academically in high school, graduating from Vashon High School before moving on to community college and eventually completing a bachelor's degree in business administration at Harris Stowe State University in St. Louis. A diligent student, she juggled part-time work at a boutique in the Central West End to help pay tuition and rent. After graduation, Nikki secured a position in the administration offices of a healthcare supply company near downtown. Over several years, she proved her competence and earned steady promotions. By the spring of 2019, Nikki was a respected assistant manager in the procurement department of the firm, well-liked by colleagues for her fairness, competence, and calm demeanor under stress. Outside of work, Nikki's ambitions included starting her own consulting business one day, perhaps helping small companies streamline their supply chains. She was also a believer in continuous self-improvement, taking online courses in the evenings, reading business journals, and networking whenever she could. She enjoyed traveling when her schedule allowed, having saved up to visit cities like Chicago and Atlanta, imagining a future where she might live in a bigger city, or even abroad for a short stint. Her personal goals were guided by a sense of rootedness in family, community, and personal ethics. She also took pride in her newly married life. In 2019, after a brief but passionate courtship, she had married Bradley Jenkins. They had plans, settling down, possibly buying a home in a comfortable suburb, and maybe starting a family in a few years. Nikki's recent life changes had been both exciting and challenging. Newly married, adjusting to the rhythms of living with Bradley, she was managing the integration of two lives, different tastes in furniture, meal planning, handling of joint finances, and navigating the sometimes turbulent waters of in-law relationships. Friends recalled that Nikki approached these changes with her characteristic optimism. She talked about saving for a home, polishing her resume for potential promotions, and maintaining a balanced lifestyle that included gym sessions, community volunteering, and weekend outings to explore the city's culinary scene. Nikki's life was enriched by close family ties. Her parents often visited from their small town to share Sunday dinners. She was particularly close with her younger brother Marcus, a tech-savvy recent college grad who teased her about her love for old-fashioned planners in a digital age. Extended family reunions were big events for Nikki. She kept in touch with cousins scattered across Missouri or a relative's milestone birthday. Friends from college often described Nikki as the reliable friend, the one who remembered birthdays, organized get-togethers, and offered a listening ear when someone was in a tough spot. Her best friend from university, Tasha, recalled that Nikki had a knack for reading people and helping them find their center. Nikki's romantic relationships before marriage had been relatively uneventful. She dated occasionally, focusing mostly on career goals. When she met Bradley, introduced through a mutual acquaintance at a neighborhood barbecue, they bonded over shared Midwestern values and their love of sports. Nikki's professional network was substantial. She served on a young professionals committee at her company, attended networking mixers for procurement specialists, and was known to be diligent in maintaining LinkedIn connections. In the community, Nikki volunteered at a local women's shelter. She wasn't deeply religious, but she occasionally attended services or community events at a local church, believing in giving back through action rather than words. On social media, Nikki had a moderate presence. Her Facebook and Instagram profiles were filled with photos of her family, a few snapshots of work colleagues at happy hours, and many pictures of her and Bradley attending ball games or out for dinner. She posted occasionally about her career achievements, like earning a professional certification in supply chain management, and sometimes shared inspirational quotes or links to interesting articles. Hobbies included yoga, reading business nonfiction, and experimenting in the kitchen with new recipes. In her daily routine, Nikki liked to wake up early, enjoy a cup of coffee while scanning business news, and then head off to work by 8. After work, she often hit the gym, picked up groceries, and spent the evening watching a movie with Bradley or catching up with friends online. In the 24 and 48 hours before her death, Nikki's life followed a familiar pattern. On Friday afternoon, she left work after a productive week. She had met a key supplier that morning, finalized some procurement contracts, and was looking forward to a relaxed weekend. That evening, she and Bradley stayed home, cooked a simple meal, and watched a late-night movie. On Saturday morning, Nikki visited a nearby farmer's market to pick up fresh produce. She sent a text to Tasha around noon, confirming a coffee date for the following Tuesday. Around 2 p.m., she shared a brief phone call with her mother, discussing a cousin's upcoming engagement party. Later in the afternoon, Nikki and Bradley prepared for the evening's event, a St. Louis Cardinals baseball game. Bradley had surprised her with tickets a week earlier. They left their apartment around 5:30 p.m. and took the Metrolink to the stadium to avoid parking hassles and enjoy a few drinks responsibly. At the stadium, they were caught on security cameras entering around 6:20 p.m. Nikki posted a short video on Instagram from their seats, tagging a few friends. The couple seemed happy, smiling, wearing their Cardinals jerseys. After the game ended, around 10 p.m., they lingered near the concessions area, meeting up with acquaintances from Bradley's workplace. There were a few credit card transactions recorded that night, a round of drinks at the stadium bar, and later a shared appetizer at a nearby pub. Witnesses spotted the couple leaving a bar close to midnight, walking in the direction of the parking garage, though they had taken public transit initially. It's possible Bradley persuaded Nikki to stop by their parked car, or maybe they had changed their plans and decided to drive home. Security cameras inside the garage's stairwells captured brief glimpses of them walking upwards, occasionally pausing. Phone records from Nikki's cell show a missed call from a coworker at around 12:30 a.m., unanswered. In these final hours, Nikki's digital footprint was minimal, mostly a few messages to friends earlier in the day, and one short call to her brother at around 7 p.m. to share how excited she was to be at the game. Nikki's state of mind in those last weeks was generally positive. According to coworkers, she had been in good spirits at work, excited about an internal job posting that could lead to a promotion. Financially, she was stable, having saved a modest emergency fund. Although friends recall a few mentions of disagreements with Bradley over mundane issues, household chores, coordinating schedules, spending habits, Nikki never openly expressed fear or concern about her husband. She looked forward to future vacations and had recently browsed travel packages online. In the days before the tragedy, nothing about her messages or social media posts hinted at distress. If anything, Nikki seemed focused on growth, a better position at work, a stable married life, and the possibility of upgrading their living situation. Bradley Jenkins was around 30 at the time. Standing about 6 feet tall with a broad-shouldered build, he projected the image of a physically strong and self-assured man. He kept his hair trimmed short and wore a neatly groomed beard. Born and raised in rural Illinois, Bradley's upbringing had instilled in him a certain straightforward practicality. His father worked as a mechanic, his mother as a part-time clerk at a grocery store. The family struggled financially at times, but they emphasized the values of hard work, honesty, and loyalty. Bradley was an average student, more inclined toward hands-on activities than academic pursuits. After high school, he tried community college for a semester before dropping out to work various blue-collar jobs. Eventually, he found steady employment with the Missouri Department of Corrections, working as a corrections officer. The job suited a certain aspect of Bradley's personality. He liked structure, rules, and the sense of authority that came from maintaining order. Over the years, he developed a reputation among coworkers as competent, but sometimes easily stressed. Financially, he did okay, building modest savings, though never truly comfortable. He moved to St. Louis after securing his position and appreciated the city's blend of amenities and opportunities. He met Nikki through friends and found her ambition and kindness appealing. They moved in together after a short courtship and married in a small ceremony attended by close family and friends about a year before the incident. Mentally and emotionally, Bradley's background suggested a man who kept his feelings to himself. He wasn't known for open displays of vulnerability. He had no documented history of severe mental health issues, but acquaintances described him as someone who could become moody or irritated under stress. A cousin once commented that Bradley had a temper when pushed, though no official record of violent behavior surfaced publicly. He had a few previous incidents of minor aggression, an argument at a bar that led to a heated exchange but not a physical altercation, some tension reported by neighbors over loud arguments with a previous girlfriend. None of these rose to the level of criminal charges, yet small red flags were scattered through his past, rarely addressed directly, perhaps overlooked because they never quite crossed a clear line before. Professionally, Bradley was stable but not particularly ambitious. He showed up on time, did what was asked, and clocked out. He spent his free time watching sports, hanging out with a small circle of friends from the correctional facility, and enjoying a few beers at local bars. Those who knew him mentioned that Bradley took pride in being the provider and expected a certain traditional dynamic in his marriage. He could be old-fashioned, expecting Nikki to handle domestic chores despite her career. While not blatantly controlling, there was a subtlety in how he tried to steer decision-making at home. Psychologically, if experts had been asked to weigh in before the tragedy, they might have found a personality prone to internalizing stress. A corrections job can take a toll, exposing an officer to tense environments daily. Over time, these pressures might accumulate, especially if not managed with proper outlets. Some colleagues mentioned noticing that Bradley was quieter in the weeks leading up to the incident, though no one reported any glaring alarm bells. If Bradley struggled with anger or anxiety, he kept it well concealed from casual observers. There was no record of formal therapy or counseling, but he might have benefited from it. In the days and hours before the crime, Bradley's behavior took on a subtle shift. He had been drinking more frequently, at least according to a coworker who saw him at a bar twice that week. He seemed restless. Changes in routine, such as leaving work slightly early a couple of times, making unusual stops at stores to buy alcohol, could, in retrospect, point to a man grappling with some internal dissatisfaction. Text messages he exchanged with Nikki mentioned small disagreements over spending habits. He seemed irritated that she wanted to save for a house while he preferred enjoying the moment. In their last known interactions, nothing suggested a calculated plan to harm Nikki, but tension was there. Financial stress, mild resentment, and possibly a growing friction in their relationship formed an undercurrent. Her opting out of spending for their relationship formed an undercurrent. Within their community, Bradley kept a relatively low profile. Neighbors considered him polite but not particularly friendly. He tended to spend weekends watching televised sports rather than attending community events. He was not involved in local charities or professional groups. His public persona was that of an ordinary working-class husband. No notable activism, no strong social media presence beyond a simple Facebook profile used to keep in touch with old high school friends. Even so, a few friends hinted that he had a way of making jokes at Nikki's expense in social settings. Some described it as teasing, others as slightly belittling. Nikki usually brushed it off or responded playfully, but it could have signaled underlying tensions. In terms of any criminal evolution, Bradley had no serious criminal record. He was not known for violence. However, if one were to piece together small signs, there might be a pattern of increasingly frustrated outbursts, a few tense moments at family gatherings, and a short temper under the influence of alcohol. Friends recalled that when Bradley drank too much, he became argumentative. In the weeks before the crime, receipts show increased alcohol purchases. He had also developed a habit of checking Nikki's social media feeds, occasionally making offhand comments about who she was texting. While not overtly stalking or monitoring, the seeds of control and suspicion might have been planted. No direct evidence suggests he scouted a location or planned a crime, but going to a parking garage's upper levels late at night after drinking might have been a split-second decision precipitated by a heated argument. There is no evidence of weapons or long-term planning. If anything, this seems more like a crime sparked by passion, frustration, and sudden rage. In the weeks leading up to that fateful night, life proceeded as normal for the couple, at least on the surface. They shopped for groceries, visited family once or twice, attended work functions, and enjoyed their season tickets to the Cardinals. Still, small cracks in their relationship began to show in subtle ways. Bradley's offhand criticisms, Nikki's sighs of exasperation when he refused to discuss future goals calmly, and their failure to align on whether to spend money on a new television or save for a house. These were not extraordinary conflicts, just the kind of everyday marital tension that could turn dangerous if combined with alcohol, frustration, and a sudden trigger. And then on the night of June 1, 2019, the hours before the crime slipped by innocuously. Nikki and Bradley left their apartment in good spirits. They took public transit to avoid the hassle of parking downtown. At the stadium, they met acquaintances and enjoyed the atmosphere. The St. Louis Cardinals game was a weekend highlight. They cheered, shared snacks, and posed for a selfie that Nikki never got to post. After the final inning, like many fans, they drifted into the nightlife scene around the ballpark, ordering drinks and chatting with strangers who recognized their jerseys. There were no glaring signs of trouble, but as the night wore on, small tensions flared. A witness at a nearby bar recalled hearing Bradley grumble about the money spent on drinks, while Nikki responded that they should have fun once in a while. Another patron overheard them discussing the practicality of taking a rideshare home. By midnight, the couple's body language had changed. Nikki seemed a bit withdrawn. Bradley spoke in clipped tones. Perhaps it was the alcohol talking, or maybe old resentments were resurfacing. Security footage would later show them entering a public garage they had not initially used for parking. Why were they there? Perhaps Bradley wanted to retrieve something from a friend's car parked inside, or maybe they were looking for a quiet place to talk. Regardless, those last minutes were decisive. June 2, 2019. Early morning. The couple was seen ascending through the concrete stairwell. The air was still warm, the city lights gleaming below. Bradley's voice echoed against the cement walls, his words indistinct. Nikki's phone recorded a short, fragmented video capturing raised voices. She might have been trying to document an escalating argument. The final moment, as reconstructed by investigators, involved a heated exchange near the railing. There were no direct witnesses to the fatal push, just the tragic aftermath. Bradley allegedly left Nikki there after she went over the edge. The exact mechanics remain a matter of legal dispute. Did he push her deliberately? Was it a struggle gone horribly wrong? The crime scene was on an upper level of the parking garage, coordinates placing it just east of the stadium. The structure was well lit by overhead fluorescence, though the corners remained in partial shadow. The concrete floors bore signs of foot traffic from thousands of event-goers who passed through earlier that night. The railing was about waist-high, not easily toppled over accidentally. The vantage point offered a view of the city's skyline, and from that height, the ground felt distant. According to the timeline pieced together by detectives, the argument lasted only a few minutes before the fall occurred. The conditions were clear. no weather impediment. The ambience was typical of a late summer night in a city center, the occasional laughter of lingering revelers. In the immediate aftermath, Bradley's behavior became a key focus of investigators. Did he flee, or did he linger? Witnesses differ. Some claim to have seen a man running down the stairwell shortly after a scream. Others saw no one at all. What is known is that Nikki's body was discovered soon after. The salesman who found her described the eerie quiet, the shock, and the heartbreak of realizing nothing could be done. Paramedics arrived swiftly, the police were summoned, the area was cordoned off with tape, journalists began to gather, alerted by scanners and calls to the newsroom. Family members would soon receive calls that would shatter their world. In the hours and days following the incident, Bradley's actions raised suspicion. Investigators traced his phone activity, a call made to a friend, text messages to a coworker, no direct attempt to notify authorities. Physical evidence emerged. Nikki's phone, found with partial video recordings of their final moments, was a key piece of evidence. Bradley's clothes, the soles of his shoes, and any potential signs of a struggle drew forensic attention. Witnesses came forward to piece together the couple's interactions that night. The digital footprint of both parties revealed tension. Access to their financial records showed no dramatic moves, but subtle hints of mounting disagreements. The initial police response was methodical. For the first 48 hours, detectives worked around the clock. They interviewed bar patrons, checked surveillance from nearby businesses, and analyzed Nikki's phone. They engaged the media, issuing careful statements that called for witnesses without revealing all known details. Nikki's family was notified and brought into a heartbreaking cycle of grief and questioning. The police worked closely with crime scene technicians and forensic specialists. Theories ranged from a tragic accident to a crime past. Little by little, the puzzle pieces fell into place. Forensic science played a critical role. Specialists examined Nikki's clothing for fibers and potential DNA transfer. They analyzed the trajectory of her fall, confirming it was unlikely to have been a simple slip. Blood pattern tests, even though limited, provided some insight. Digital forensics was crucial. Extracting data from Nikki's phone, retrieving deleted messages, and cross-reframing timestamps, they ran DNA tests on skin cells beneath Nikki's fingernails, just to see if there had been a struggle. Toxicology reports determined her blood alcohol level, and that of Bradley's when he was eventually apprehended. Each test was a step toward understanding motive and sequence. As the investigation progressed, evidence mounted against Bradley. The short video clip on Nikki's phone captured his voice raised in anger. Forensic analysis confirmed that a brief struggle preceded the fall. Witnesses who saw them enter the garage placed them together at the approximate time of the incident. Investigators assembled a detailed timeline, overlaying security camera footage from the stadium and nearby businesses, followed credit card charges, saw where Bradley had bought drinks, and matched that with the time he and Nikki left the bar. Patterns emerged: tension, intoxication, and a final confrontation. Technology helped fill in gaps. Police used cell tower data, reviewed text messages, and employed audio specialists to enhance the muffled voices on the recorded clip. Armed with this evidence, police approached Bradley for questioning. He initially claimed ignorance, stating he and Nikki parted ways and he didn't know what happened. But as inconsistencies in his story emerged, and confronted with the mounting forensic and digital evidence, he could not provide a convincing account. Eventually, arrest and charging followed. The prosecution built a case around intent and rage. Defense attorneys tried to frame it as a tragic accident, a drunken misstep. They highlighted the lack of a direct eyewitness to the actual push. Nevertheless, the evidence weighed heavily on the prosecution's side. The recorded argument, the physics of the fall, the suspicious behavior afterward. Before trial, the community watched closely. Some sympathized with Nikki's family, attending memorial services, bringing flowers to the spot where she was found. The local media followed every development: arrest, bail hearings, discovery motions. Experts speculated on the nature of domestic conflict, the role of alcohol, and the warning signs that might have been missed. Friends of Nikki demanded justice. Bradley's family struggled to understand, insisting he wasn't a violent man. The tension rippled through conversations at office water coolers, in neighborhood cafes, and on social media groups. Everyone had an opinion. The trial itself became a high-profile event. The prosecution presented opening statements that painted a picture of a relationship unraveling under stress. They produced forensic experts who testified about the fall's trajectory and the improbability of an accident. Digital forensics experts explained how Nikki's phone recorded the argument, providing a haunting glimpse into the final moments. The prosecution showed text messages suggesting friction. They called witnesses who had seen the couple arguing earlier that night. Nikki's friends and family gave emotional impact statements, humanizing her beyond the dry facts of the case. The defense strategy aimed to poke holes in the prosecution's narrative. They argued that no one actually saw the push. For minor evidence details. The defense presented character witnesses who claimed Bradley was a kind man, never known to be violent. In the end, however, the weight of the evidence made it hard to believe that Nikki simply slipped and fell. When the trial ended, the jury deliberated and a verdict was rendered. Bradley Jenkins was found guilty. Sentencing brought a measure of closure, though it would never heal the loss fully. The community response after the case settled in was reflective. People demanded better awareness of domestic tensions, even subtle ones. Local organizations set up workshops to teach couples conflict resolution and stress management. The city council discussed installing more surveillance cameras in public garages, improving safety measures, and ensuring well-lit exits. Civic groups organized memorial runs and fundraising drives in Nikki's name, contributing to causes that supported victims of domestic violence. For Nikki's family, the aftermath was a long journey of grief. They leaned on each other, sought professional counseling, and eventually set up a scholarship in her honor at Harris-Stowe State University. They dealt with intrusive media attention, learning how to navigate interviews and maintain privacy. Over time, they found a delicate balance between remembering Nikki's vibrant life and moving forward. The financial burden of funeral costs and legal consultations weighed on them, but community donations and crowdfunding campaigns offered some relief. In the quiet moments, they reminisced about Nikki's warm smile, her ambition, and the future that was so cruelly taken from her. The long-term consequences of the case rippled beyond personal tragedy. The justice system in Missouri took note. The handling of the case influenced training sessions for new investigators, emphasizing the importance of digital forensics, early witness interviews, and victim-centered approaches. Prosecutors cited the trial in educational seminars for law students, showcasing how a careful balance of forensic evidence and digital trails can lead to a strong case. The case entered academic study. Criminology students analyzed it as an example of interpersonal violence facilitated by opportunity and alcohol. Culturally, the case reminded the community to pay closer attention to red flags in relationships. People talked more openly about conflict resolution, couples therapy, and the importance of seeking help before disagreements turned into tragedy. Local nonprofits stepped up outreach efforts, ensuring that hotlines, shelters, and counseling services were well publicized. The city implemented mild policy changes in public parking structures, improved camera coverage, signage promoting safety resources, and periodic patrols by security staff. While these measures cannot erase the past, they signal a collective effort to learn from it. In the historical record of St. Louis crimes, Nikki Jenkins's death and the subsequent conviction of Bradley Jenkins stand as a reminder of how quickly a night of celebration can turn into tragedy. Investigators look back and consider it a textbook case in which modern forensic techniques, careful digital evidence analysis, and early witness cooperation converged to produce clarity. Journalists who covered the trial note that it sparked deeper dialogues on domestic conflict in seemingly ordinary households. Over the years, the case has been referenced in true crime documentaries, scholarly papers, and community forums, maintaining a quiet but persistent presence in public memory. As time passes, the immediate shock fades. But the lessons remain: respecting boundaries, seeking help, and understanding the warning signs of escalating domestic disagreements are messages that now circulate more openly among young couples in the city. The Jenkins case serves as a cautionary tale for communities everywhere, illustrating the fragility of life when anger and opportunity intersect in tragic ways. In the end, the story of Nikki Jenkins is not defined solely by the way she died, but by the life she led and the echoes of change her loss inspired. Her name endures in the scholarship fund helping students chase their ambitions, in the memory of colleagues who remember her steady competence, and in the hearts of a family who refuses to let her warmth be forgotten. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more true crime stories. Please feel free to share your thoughts and insights in the comments below. Discuss this case, its implications, or other cases that highlight the importance of recognizing early warning signs and seeking help. Consider looking into related cases in the region or across the country where similar patterns may have emerged. Let's keep the conversation going, remembering that every tragedy holds lessons that can guide us toward preventing future heartbreak.